Hi, a warm welcome to all. Please welcome Mr. Hariranjan Rao, Joint Secretary, Department of Telecom, Mr. Sanjay Nayak, CEO and MD, Tejas Networks, Mr. Anjan Das, Chief Policy Advocacy Officer, Sterlite Technologies, and Mr. Rahul Vats, Chief Regulatory Officer, Bharti Airtel.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Way back in 1994, when we released the first edition of Communications Today, India had just BSNL and MTNL as their service providers. Only a couple of MNCs as vendors, ITI, HTL, and Bharat Electronics, the PSUs, were a reservation quota for orders awarded, and a handful of Indian manufacturing facilities. It has been a long, arduous journey since then. Today, in 2021, competition among the telecom service providers is consolidated to 3 plus 1. We have available to us world class equipment at competitive prices and with some manufacturing and R&D being done in India. We have a responsive government at the helm with initiatives as PLI, PM Vani, BharatNet, NDCP 2018, ROW Rules 2016, National Broadband Mission, Digital India, opening up the space sector, and a new broadcasting policy in the anvil. A telecom regulator is in place and Niti Aayog to draw on when the need arises. Challenges in high spectrum fees, inconsistencies in calculation of AGR, challenging an international tribunal verdict in the Singapore courts when already having lost at Hague are another story not on the agenda today. At this juncture, India seems to be in a takeoff stage, ready to make its mark on the global production and exports map. If the industry gets some support and then some tweaking in the policies announced, there is no reason why we cannot become a manufacturing hub and attract overseas manufacturers. That we have the world's attention has been amply displayed by investments made in Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel, and the continued support that Voda Idea is receiving from its parent in UK. And the stage had been set with the US-China trade discord and the Ladakh standoff, though the situation may be somewhat reset with Trump gone and the withdrawal of troops from the Pangong Tso Glacial Lake and the subsequent 25% FDI through automatic route to China announced. The topic of today's discussion at India Telecom 2021, being organized by TEPC, is the critical role of policy in creating competitive telecoms markets. We are fortunate to have with us an eminent panel, stalwarts who have the experience, the knowledge, and the depth to share with us their thoughts on this. I invite Mr. Hariranjan Rao to respond. My first question is, what policy initiatives is the government planning to bring in a premium service as FG in a price-sensitive country as India? Second, the industry is hugely appreciative of the PLI scheme introduced for various product segments. However, in some cases, further tweaking in the policy may be required to ensure that India does become a telecom equipment manufacturing hub. For instance, the recent ICA request for an incentive of 8 to 10% of the turnover. Would that be acceptable to the policymakers? Mr. Hariranjan Rao, please.
Thank you, Anju. I think I will answer this question, the second question later. The first question is on 5G, and let me say that a couple of steps that the government has taken on 5G so far are very encouraging, because number one, now that the spectrum auction for 4G has started today, we know that the next thing in line is going to be the 5G spectrum availability. Now the question is that you raise that it's a price-sensitive market in India, whether 5G will be rolled out or not. I think all the players, telecom players in India, are eagerly looking forward to rolling out their 5G plans. They have already made it public, and India has an advantage that we have the lowest ever data rates in the country, in the world so far. So building on 5G above it would only be value-add services, and I think customer will be willing to pay for the value addition. So it's going to be going up from here. So I don't see a problem there. But yes, from the policy perspective, there are a lot many things that we need to do, and we are already on the job. As you are aware, there's a high-level forum for 5G where all of us contributed to various policy suggestions and prescriptions, which we are now gradually rolling out. See, to give you an example, one one big challenge for 5G rollout for all my telecom companies, and Rahul and Anjan Das ji would agree with me when they speak, is going to be the right of way issue. You see, the way right of way issue has been so far understood in the country is grossly inadequate, I must say. So now an understanding has gradually started developing that it is not a child's play, and this is not going to be a revenue generating activity for local bodies and the state governments. I'm happy to share that ROW rules in 2016 we had come out with, which had very model and idealistic kind of situation. But after the National Broadband Mission was launched exactly a year back, and now more than 20 states have adopted the ROW rules, though there are some differences in terms of rates. But now we are trying to bring them also along. I think some bit of climbing down also will be required from our side, because we have said just 10,000 rupees and 1,000 rupees per kilometer full stop. Perhaps that was not something which once one solution trying to paint all the city the same color and all that. We need to be slightly more flexible in that, but otherwise states have come on board. Another good news, under the National Broadband Mission, all the states in the country, and I repeat, all the states in the country have constituted their state broadband committees, barring very few small states, and they have held their meetings, which are held by chief secretaries of the state. So now we are saying that telecom may be a union subject in the constitution of scheme of things, but the action lies on the ground. So we want that, let the issues of telecom, let the issues of ROW, let the issues of 5G rollout be handled at the local level. So now state broadband committees with chief secretary and telecom companies and infra companies are talking real issues. This municipality is creating so much of delay. This municipality is charging so high. This is where we are facing problem in laying our cable. This is where our towers are getting sealed for longer time period, and so on. So I see very positive outcome in this. And as and when we gradually start inching towards the eventual rollout of 5G, my own hunch is that the acceptance and understanding of policy support for rollout of a technology like 5G would be much higher, much better. And we will keep continuing to work on this. See, NDCP had another provision of National Fiber Authority. So the concept was that is it possible for one single authority to keep the information and ensure that anybody trying to cut the fiber is at least can cross check from some other forum, sir, I'm wanting to widen this road, is it okay? Is there a fiber laid here? As of now, nobody knows. So I'm, as a contractor of PWD, I'm saying simply laying my road, and I eventually end up cutting 4 or 5 fibers, and then we keep fighting. So we have moved the draft also for National Fiber Authority. We'll go for wider consultations. Things are in progress, and I think we will be there where we want to be. And 5G rollout is going to be quite exciting because there will be larger participation. Now brings me to the next issue. This is of device ecosystem. You said PLI has been welcomed by the industry. I think this has to come from Sanjay, because I'm on the other side. We have made the scheme. But yes, we know broadly that industry has welcomed it, because this is where we now talk of outcomes. See, somebody who is going to produce and sell is going to be incentivized. But still a long way to go. You talked about ICAI and they're asking for 8 to 10%. Well, as of now, we have started with 6%, tapering it down to 4% over a period of 5 years. I think that's a good beginning. But there are more ways to reduce the compliance costs. And therefore, I'm very happy to also tell you that very seriously, I'm working on reducing the compliance burden and also, trying to easing the doing business. It will also eventually lead to reducing the costs. So everything doesn't need to be financially only compensated. So if there is a cost disadvantage of 10%, let's not take a easier route of straight away paying 10% and say now go ahead and fulfill the dream. Let's also understand where things are going wrong and we'll try to fix it. But I'm sure with the help of everybody, we'll be able to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question I pose to Sanjay: as a manufacturer, fully equipped to supply core and radio on a turnkey basis, what government policy support would you expect or need to ensure that new generation telecom equipment is made in India?
Thank you. First of all, very happy to be a part of this panel and sharing my ideas. So, number one, I think the question we need to ask, and it's a very basic question, but I thought it'll be worth thinking, is does the world or India need India to produce its own equipment? Why can't we just continue the status quo and continue to import the way we have? So I think there's a any problem, there is two things. There's a threat and there's an opportunity. So the threat is very well understood. In the last 24 months, there's been a serious shift in geopolitical equations, distortions in supply chain, 5G being and 5G and fiber to the home. If you think of everything in our own lives is going to be connected on a network, so the security threat is real. So for all of these reasons, I think if India aspires to be a developing country in the next 5 years or developed country in the next 5 years, there is no way that we cannot have trusted telecom infrastructure, which I'm sure everybody, every citizen in the country agrees to. So I think that's a need basis which is absolutely clear. Now let me talk of the opportunity. Whatever we are seeing in India, I can assure you we are seeing in 100 countries around the world. I was talking to a very large operator in Africa yesterday night, actually a Saturday evening. He just wanted to talk to us on a Saturday, because exactly what I described is what is happening in Africa. There's tons and tons of bandwidth being coming to Africa. People want to build trusted equipment from certain countries is not being considered as trusted. So there is, in the world, traditionally there have been two ecosystems. There's a Western world ecosystem, which is US, Europe primarily, and the Chinese ecosystem, which is the Eastern ecosystem. India actually is an opportunity situation, which is the best of both worlds. We have the price competitiveness of a Chinese company. We have the innovation DNA of a US or European company, and I would actually go a step further. I did a last count at a back of the envelope calculation. More than 50% of the world's engineers, R&D engineers who are developing any kind of telecom equipment ex-China are from India. Either they're working in India or working somewhere in the world for whichever company. So for us as a country, we are not a republic in Africa or a little country in Latin America that we don't have the talent. We have the best talent in the world. So it will be unfortunate that we lose out this once in a lifetime opportunity for a nation to create our own telecom equipment. And that's why I think our Prime Minister, I saw very recently, he mentioned somewhere in the context of another industry, that we have to have a design-led manufacturing approach. We have to create Indian products, Indian IPR, Indian technology. Because the traditional approach which you followed in the last 25 years, and Anju, you started out, encountering how we used to do manufacturing, transfer of technology. In tech world, there is no transfer of technology. There's only transfer of obsolete technology. So if India wants to do manufacturing based on obsolete technology, by all means, you'll get the technology from wherever. If you want to create your own products, you got to do R&D. So I think design-led manufacturing is the right way to go. I believe that that's the way the government is promoting. So even in the new PLI policy for mobile, and I'm assuming it's going to be for telecom, whatever is the capital investment that you do in plant and infrastructure, you could also do capital investment in the form of R&D as per the Indian GAAP or accounting rules or whatever, because that is what will create long-term value, and that is really where India's sweet spot is. So if you really see how 5G ecosystem is evolving in the world, 25 years back, a telecom equipment, I would say, was 90% hardware, 10% software. Today, a telecom equipment is probably 80% design, software, IPR, whatever you want to call it, and 20% or 10% is really manufacturing. So do we want to solve the 20% problem, or do you want to solve the 80% problem? Whereas the 80% is India's sweet spot. There is no handicap on talent. We have more talent in the world than you can imagine. We have the most cost-effective R&D per human being that can exist on this earth, at least for telecom equipment. So we don't have to be, there's no disadvantage on that, like when Hari Ranjan was saying that there will be disabilities and many of them are not financial. Trust me, we have an asset which is non-financial, which is our manpower. So we can do a lot more R&D, create our own products. And the good news is, because the telecom equipment has become a lot more flexible, which is software and design oriented, 24 months from time zero, you can create whatever products you want if you want to. And I can give you concrete examples. Like 12 months back, there was no 4G ecosystem in the country in terms of Indian hardware, software, core, RAN, everything. In the last 12 months, everything is available. People can see. So I think that's possible. Now, coming back to what support we need from government. So let me also tell you, around the world, no telecom ecosystem has come up without government support. Okay. China basically created an export-driven strategy and exploiting their large home market. So 80% of the Chinese home market was built up using Chinese equipment. And then as a significantly and probably the most potent weapon of foreign policy, telecom exports was considered for Africa, Latin America, and all the other countries and countries that have companies that have done very well. So I think it is a fantastic opportunity for India to replicate the domestic success. We have a large home market. the 4G and the 5G ecosystem, fiber to the home infrastructure is all coming together. There's good products, and all that can be scaled up. So that's one part. The second part I really believe is the you know uh, incentivizing to cover up for the disabilities that Hari Ranjan talked about. So I think the PLI policy essentially does that. It's an outcome based policy. There's no free money for anybody. So if the basically the rule of thumb in the PLI policy is very simple. You invest 100 in capital investment, whether in manufacturing, R&D, or whatever. 20 times of that and 5% back you get. So literally the investment you're making comes back to you. So I think it's a fantastic policy by the government. It's on an incremental basis, so that's good. I think the tweaking and the detailing has to be made very friendly. I still believe that we are undervaluing, underestimating, and undermining the importance of making capital investment in R&D. Every dollar invested in R&D and IPR creation equals to $10 in, if you just put a plant in machinery which is going to get depreciated over 5 years versus R&D is going to be there forever. So I think the mindset of the government is in the right direction. Export promotion is very crucial. One concrete thing I would like to say is that India has built a very large BharatNet infrastructure. If you say BharatNet plus Aadhaar plus UPI plus all the stacks and every software on top, this whole digitization of economy recipe that India has mastered over the past 5 years is our single biggest export potential in any sector that I can think of. There are 100 countries in the world who want to digitize their traditional economies and go to digital economy. India has the blueprint ready at the lowest cost in the world in multilingual situation with a private public participation. We've got to promote export of such ICT projects. We got to go to a country XYZ in Africa and you say what? We'll give you the network, we'll give you the UPI stack, we'll give you the DigiLocker, we'll give you all the apps, and here's $1 billion which your government was planning to spend, and we'll do it for 750 million because we've done it 2 times before. And if you do this for 100 countries, you're talking of $100 billion export opportunity. Just to put numbers into perspective, Australia spent $42 billion to create their equivalent of BharatNet. UK has a budget of $11 billion to create rural connectivity in UK, which is again, by the way, bad. US has a $9 billion budget for rural Connect America program, and India has connected 150,000 villages at a total budget of $6 billion, which is 20 or 30,000 crores. So I think we are doing it at 1/5 of the world's price, like what Rahul and Airtel and other guys have done in terms of our mobile and broadband services. This recipe has to be replicated, and this is where government has to make it as a big push for foreign policy. It should be a technology-led export policy. No more. There's no point giving a building and a road as an infrastructure. Give the telecom infrastructure of a country. That will continue to upgrade. 100 Mbps will become a gig. Gig will become 100 gig. It's a continuous repetition business. So I think this is really where a little bit of mindset has to change, and that's why since we are on the TEPC and the forum for exactly doing this, I would strongly encourage as an ecosystem between stuff that Anjan does, stuff that Rahul's company does, and stuff we do, and the kind of support Hari Ranjan provides. I think we can all, as an Indian ecosystem, go to the world and sell what India has done so successfully in our home market. So that's really what I would like to say. So government is doing well. I think the tweaking is needed, a little bit mindset is needed, and a little bit more aggression is needed. We need to set and say, you know what, out of the $10 billion of export LOC available for Africa, let's make sure that 25% of that will be for such ICT project exports. Let's go find them. Let's make them happen. That has to be the approach. This is how China has done. This is how Singapore does, foreign export. This is how other countries do. I think we've got to become a little bit more aggressive in that process, and I think we can achieve this. That's really where I would pause for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anjan, India is hugely inadequate on optical fiber infrastructure and backhaul. We require major fiberization of towers and sites, not only in cities but also in villages. What are the challenges you expect and the support you need from the policymakers, apart from the obvious ROW issue?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, TEPC for the invitation and to be on this panel. I think it's very important in the sense that I think I will add a little bit of addendum what Sanjay spoke about. I think he has actually spoken about the core part of it. And if we want to really be a world players in the telecom and the digital space in next 5 to 10 years time frame, I think we need to take which are known. I think capabilities are known, resources are known, everything is known. But I think it is actually putting some pieces together. So one or two points I just wanted to mention, not to take much time. One is, I think we have to take the whole sector in a little bit of holistic way. The R&D capability, human resource development, investments in infrastructure, operational efficiency, startups development, international technology partnerships, which plays a huge role, and many others. So I think that someone has to really look at these major pieces together in an integrated manner, rather than each pieces are being handled in different pockets. So I think this is the first point I wanted to make, is that it can be handled by different pockets in the government system. I'm sure, for example, if R&D is seen at the Science and Technology Ministry or Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, human resource in the Human Resource Ministry, but how this particular sector can be focused and integrate and align all this all these segments for a single goal. I think that's the one point. I think we need a system integrator into this system. That's number one. I see that would be a major beneficiary. Second item, actually, I want to see that the investment part, which Sanjay touched upon. I think that most of the countries, if we see that the upper age of the economic development and developed nations, I think they spend around 1 to 1.2% of their GDP into the digital infrastructure. And if you look at our side, I think it is less than 0.5% of the GDP. So I think we need to really look at digital infrastructure building is a almost like a conventional infrastructure building for any other sectoral and the societal development to build on the digital infrastructure. So I think we need to really change our mindset, possibly to see that how this infrastructure can be developed and investments model can be drawn. I think investment and the operational model can be drawn if we change this particular mindset that this is another set of infrastructure. That's number one. Number two is the alignment and the consistency. I think most of the government initiatives are taken in silos in various ministries, and the absence of comprehensive framework, or we can say Make in India, for example, or Digital India, the benefit offered through various policy interventions actually not yielded very desired results. For example, many ministry running digital investment programs in silos, maybe health or education or MSME or all these different ministries. The policy consistency actually is very important. For example, certain benefits and the incentives have been rolled out to support the domestic manufacturing, but then some point in time we see that some are withdrawn, and it is very difficult to actually on the ground to get this benefit. So I think we need to align this particular piece also, which is basically the consistency and the alignment. And I think that Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is being now, I think we realized very strongly, which was initially was not taken in that kind of seriousness, that whether we can possibly achieve that kind of huge unassailable goal. But I think this is insight, which is very important for us, at least for this particular sector, to be a secured kind of a sector. I think this is very important to bring all these pieces together. We have all the resources and the capability in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Rahul, the three important policy initiatives that are being discussed among all concerned are ensuring adequate spectrum availability at affordable prices, lower reserve price, and uniform ROW policy for fiberization. Please elaborate or comment on any other initiative that you seek from the policymakers.
Thank you, Anju. Let me also thank TEPC and Mr. Arun Gupta for this opportunity. It's a privilege to have a panel where Sanjay is there, Mr. Rao is there, and Anjan is there. Always a pleasure to get such sane advice, from such people. So let me start by saying, as far as the 5G is concerned, let me start with the good news first. That earlier, last month, we did our first demo of the 5G using our existing liberalized spectrum in Hyderabad, where we were able to demonstrate very clearly the readiness of our Airtel network to be able to roll on into 5G, as soon as the government clears the policy bottlenecks which are in place. And though you have mentioned about price, I will just take 2-3 minutes to explain the pricing and why it is such a critical component of this entire jigsaw puzzle. You see, today the pricing in the country for 5G is around 492 crores per megahertz. That's in the 3.5 band. If I compare that in absolute terms, this is like 70 times over Austria, around 35 times over Spain, 7 times over UK, and 3 times over Italy. If you say, no, no, but you are not doing it right, you should get the population and the GDP in place, well, then the answer is around 10 times over Austria, 16 times over Spain, 6 times over UK. Now, if you turn around and still tell me, no, you are not doing the right GDP per capita, you should actually look at population and ARPU, well, then too, versus Austria, I'm 3 times more, versus UK, I'm still 3 times more. So there is a huge, pricing issue which needs to be addressed. If the country wants to head towards 5G, it's very, very important that we get the pricing absolutely correct in terms of our, rollout. Also, the issue about availability of other bands is very, very critical, which I'm sure Mr. Rao and DOT are seized of, and I hear all the good news coming from the DOT on that end. So I think spectrum availability might not be such a big issue, but pricing definitely needs a relook, and I'm sure Mr. Rao and DOT are looking into it. Now let me come to 2 or 3 other important aspects for a 5G rollout. There is this huge point which Sanjay made right now about getting the scale correct and being able to have the ability to be able to export to the world, have the flexibility to be able to do that. And for that, I think a very important part is to be part of a globally harmonized standards in the country. And why it is that is important is because it helps you to be interoperable, it helps you for faster implementation, it helps your performance, and also lowers the cost of equipment of rollout. Now, today there is a talk of having some India-specific standards. While we all welcome that, we should remain aligned with the world. We should not become isolated island. There are tons of examples in technology where technologies have remained into islands. There is example of China. There is example of CDMA, and what happened in television technology a few years back is, of course, the building blocks of where we have reached. So I think very important for us to remain globally harmonized in any standards debate we are doing. Important to get alignment on that is a very, very important part. The other part, I think you have already touched, is the right of way. I will not dwell into it. Mr. Rao has got a lot of energy, enthusiasm. He has interacted with us so much, and we are very sure on right of way the government is going to do the right thing, and we are going to see a large part happening. Let me touch the other part. Even though, how is the 5G rollout happening across the world? Is it all happening on fiber? The answer is no. We participated in a GSMA study, and let me tell you today, wherever rollouts are happening, around 55% of the networks continue to be on microwave backhaul. So fiberization is happening on 5G, but maximum in even developed countries around 45%. 55% networks are still being carried on backhaul. And for that to happen for 5G, the ENV band needs to be in place now. The recommendations are in place for last 6 years. I think it's high time we take a final decision and move ahead on that. Fiberization, Mr. Rao is already doing that. But just to give you a numbers, we are around 30% covered right now. And I think that number needs to go up in next few years to the world averages at only about 55% right now. So we hope we are going to reach there. One last point on 5G is that we have been talking about 5G for too long. We had asked the government for trial spectrum to be made available. We can try out certain case use, and how and see, how equipment actually rolls out. See whatever availability is there in terms of that. I think that is the other area. I think we are waiting for some clarity on. So this, in short, is what I say in terms of our requirements. Thank you.
Sanjay and Anjan, representing leading manufacturing companies, can I request you to ask one question to Mr. Hari Ranjan?
So no, thank you first of all to give this opportunity. I think only I have one question, or rather a comment come question, is that I think the government policies are always very well intended. There's no doubt about it. I think right now, as I think Rahul or someone mentioned, that this time around, or Anjan mentioned, the whole concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat and really India becoming a global powerhouse is very real. I think the challenge always comes back into the fine print and implementation of some of these policies. So my only request and a comment to Mr. Rao is, and I think Anjan mentioned it in the context, he didn't specifically say, but I think you are probably alluding to the MSIPS policy, where actually Tejas was probably the first company that got the MSIPS policy approval, But unfortunately, till date, we have not got any reimbursement out of it as yet, because it's very complicated process to apply. So I'm hoping that the PLI policy will be simple. PLI policy will also ensure that the R&D is promoted, because otherwise it will only remain a lip service. So, and similarly, the third aspect of the Atmanirbhar mission is the Make in India, which is there. But I know that even today, there are a lot of tenders, especially in states and other places, where restrictive conditions are put in two forms, where the best way for the domestic industry not to win business is to make sure that they don't bid. So the eligibility conditions are so framed either from technical eligibility, whether you don't need something. I'll just give you an example of a recent state tender. The state has a population of, say, 1 crore or 1.5 crore or whatever, but the amount of IP addresses they ask for in some of the switches and routers were more than the IP addresses that exist in the world. So it was a very clear case of someone trying to cook the specs so that you basically out spec. So I think when the industry brings up such issues, my only request, and I would like Mr. Rao to comment, is that timely action is everything. If suppose a tender comes and no action is taken, tender goes, nobody has the energy to fight stuff. If you apply for any incentives, we will all do the work, but if the incentives don't come, life moves on. I will sell to Rahul and I'll sell to all the other private operators in the world and all that and move on. So I really think the policies have to be backed up with very good implementation. Intent is clear, there is no doubt about it. I think some kind of a nodal monitoring of the policies, which are all well meant, well intended, well crafted, should be there. And the last comment I have is it should be a living policy document in terms of implementation. Someone may have an implementation outlook A to begin with, but if the industry comes back with genuine reasons and if someone does believe that it is true, I think we should be open to make it A dash if that's what is going to give us the results for the country. So those are the questions / comments I had for Mr. Rao. He may choose to answer, or that's his call. Thank you.
So one thing is that I will go again with Sanjay, that the R&D becomes a very, very important element for some of the companies who are actually investing seriously. It's not the book, entry to the book, seriously putting money into this. And human resource becomes one of the major component of expenditure. Now, if you keep human resource out of R&D expenditure, I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, you need brains. I mean, so infrastructure can be always taken from even national labs and then all other different ways. But then if we are not allowing this, so I think you need to really look at that particular component in the PLI, that human resource and R&D should be actually embedded into the system. That's number one. That's just a suggestion and request. And the second one is, again, the point is that operational issues, but ROW issues. So if you are are you hopeful that that new ways of doing or ease of ROW and all that is really going to happen with a very strong and robust center-state coordination, like possibly GST Council or something like that, single window, all the rate card are there and all that. Are you going to see that this is going to happen? And I'm sure that would be a dream of all of us. The two things.
See, what we are trying to say is we don't want a Pfizer Argentina thing happening where Pfizer is looking for bank guarantees, sort of a thing from Argentina. I'm sure you read about that recently. That India should not come to that. That will be a very sad day, I think.
Okay, so I will quickly respond to things that I wish to respond. Thanks, Sanjay, for giving me that. So quickly, yeah. So coming back to first issue is of the PLI scheme, and as you said that investments in R&D should also be considered in PLI scheme. The guidelines are not frozen as yet; they have not been drafted, and I'm sure we will do the consultation with the industry as we have been doing in the past. So government is open about ideas, and PLI scheme, in fact, as you know, has been launched after massive consultation round with all kinds of manufacturers and contract manufacturers, everybody at every level. So we would like the intended objective of the scheme to be achieved, and to that extent, we are certainly open. And so we will interact in coming days, and we will take your feedback and input for that. Now the larger issue which Sanjay also mentioned about government contracts and tenders and all. Sanjay and me are, sometimes in the same boat, sometimes in different boats. But that's okay. That's part of the game, part of the life. But I have a feeling, and I'm sure Sanjay would agree with that. You see, the vision for Atmanirbhar or for a resurgent India should be such that the Indian design-led manufacturing should be ruling the world, not only Indian government procurements. I mean, that's a very, very small portion of the overall kitty. So yes, that's a good beginning, and that's where my friends are actually asking for fair play and etc. I fully admire that. But my take is that I think we need to think afresh in pushing the Indian-led design and manufacturing beyond the boundaries of pure government procurement only. If that means a different scheme, a new scheme, let's think about it. I am open to the ideas. I'm inviting suggestions from the government. Not that I am the final authority, but at least uh, germination of ideas can take place. If there needs to be a separate scheme which pushes an Indian player to go and export to 10 other countries in the world, and you come back and let us know you have exported for your design-led manufacturing. Here we give you the incentive for your design because we have done something for the nation. So I think in those lines also we need to think. And as I said, things have started moving in a very positive direction. So these things are all now possible, and now there is a larger ecosystem to appreciate this. As regards Mr. Anjan's concern, whether we will have this kind of an utopian situation, well, I am a firm believer of positivity and results. You see, GST eventually happened. Now, whatever way it happened, and one can always look back and give some 10, 15 comments, but it happened. The way we are looking at the ROW issue, because I'm interacting with the chief secretaries, I'm interacting with the IT secretaries, you see, there is a need for us to communicate very effectively. And 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 policy making is never the best. It is always the second best, where you have to give and take. So when I say you can't tell the municipal commissioner of a large municipal corporation that sorry, tomorrow onwards you will get zero out of ROW. He will not accept because that's his bread and butter that we are snatching away. So there has to be a middle ground, a meeting point. You want to do that. Secondly, and all of you are technology companies, you know that now technology can provide a lot of solutions which otherwise were unheard of. So when I say that we want to have a single window platform for ROW permissions, you see, it is possible technologically. And of course, Rahul would say that I'm coming up with a lot of energy, but I have thought through it, and I need to get ideas from all of you. See, it's possible for every municipal commissioner to log into his account and see how many permissions are pending, and then take a call. The permission has to be given, and these are the prices which are already being paid. Money has gone into their account. It doesn't take any more time. Today we are doing everything manually, and one platform can take care of that. Why do we ask 32, 36 states to prepare their single window platforms? For a company like Airtel, if you have to apply to 36 states for an ROW, only your nightmare has begun. So I am now pushing for something which may look to be very difficult, but once you see the solution, it's very easy. So today Aadhaar is become very easy. Today, when you want to make a payment through Paytm or Google Pay or Phone Pay, whatever, you say I don't have to give anything. I just type my mobile number and I say SBI. It picks up from the back end. So I have no worries. Where have they picked up from the back end? Where have they done the collaboration? All things is going in the back. As a citizen, my interface is very seamless and very easy. So it is possible. So if an infrastructure company wants to apply for an ROW from one place to another, let the databases talk to each other. It can be central database. The interface can be very simple, very intuitive. So it is possible. As regards Rahul also raising certain issues of prices. Naturally, you would appreciate. I'm too junior and too inadequately equipped at this point of time to comment on 5G spectrum pricing. You know that spectrum pricing is not something which one joint secretary decides in a ministry. Having said that, and you have also given fairly good comparison, although I was curious why Austria to be compared with, not a benchmark. We could have picked up better countries to compare with, but I think Austria suits Rahul, so that's fine. But but my issue is that if the spectrum prices are high or not, then this is something which at the highest level you will have to raise the policy issue. I think there have been deliberations, not that we are not aware about it. But apart from spectrum pricing, I think a lot of other areas also where we need to do a lot of work to make the life easier for 5G rollout. And I'm volunteering to from the DOT as a policy head. I look after the policy division. Whatever policy support you want, let us know. We'll try to push things. Sometimes things take time. Sometimes things do faster. And we have a good ecosystem in the sense the political leadership has firm clarity and role they have assigned to themselves in terms of pushing things. We will be able to reach there where we want to reach, and we would be wanting to part of that, glorious success story. Unlike the example that Anju gave about a country not wanting to name that and end up in some kind of trouble.
That's our fear. That's our fear.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
let's in on those lines. I think I would like to
Thank
keep it in a positive spirit all the time. Yeah.
Rahul, representing the telcos, would you like to ask Mr. Hariranjan anything? I know one of your huge pain points at this time is the possibility of delicensing of the premier band in 5G spectrum allocation or any other point. Anything? I mean, he just said that he. Would you like to ask him anything?
First, let me clarify about the Austria and the other example. So, you see, there are two points out there. Why we say Austria? Because Europe is the nation where some 5G auctions have happened recently. So it gives a good benchmark for us to study. You cannot compare with the US generally because the quantum is very, very different and how they use it is also quite different. Uh, Other example can be perhaps China, but Sanjay will vouch for this. China spends just 20% money on spectrum acquisition, the operators, and 80% on network rollout. Whereas in our country, we are spending 80% money on spectrum and only 20% on network rollouts. So I'm saying that there is a huge opportunity for us as a country to do differently in 5G, and to really take it up and bring it down to everybody in the country. So that's the that part. Now, in terms of spectrum and what is being made available, I think goes without saying that today, with this round of auction still happening around, in terms of being comfortable, we are just about going to touch bare minimum of what we would require for a robust rollout to start happening, right? So we will have a mixture of sub gigahertz, mid band, and the capacity spectrum. And going ahead, we are looking at 3.5, of course, and then we are of course looking at opportunities in millimeter wave, and these are all bands which are very, very important to do a comprehensive rollout. I also earlier touched about the ENV band and why the ENV band is important, because you have to have a mixture of the fiber and the backhaul to take you along. uh, we are very, very skeptical as far as the usage of spectrum is concerned for delicensing and otherwise. The country already has a large amount of delicensed spectrum, right? More than 600 megahertz is available for Z licensed. And let me tell you a practical example. I don't know whether Sanjay and Anjan face it. If I go to big enterprise today for their tender or a government tender, I can give you example of SBI, for example. When we go to SBI and say, okay, I will do the tender for you for your services, he flatly refuses to say. He says the last mile cannot be on the D license band, right? It has to be only on a deal. You cannot. You have to use license spectrum to give me the enterprise services. So this is the thing which we are doing. The customer is wanting quality to come to him. It's very easy to say that you want to do de-license, you want to increase the opportunity, and we are all for it. We are saying both have to coexist, right? The country has laid down a policy of doing spectrum auctions, of bringing certainty to investments, and when more than 7 lakh crores has gone into investments, we can't reach a point where we say that a very, very critical part of spectrum is now going to be de-licensed, right? So you have to have a very important mix of that framework in mind. But the question which I would like to put to Mr. Rao is simply this, that we have seen a lot of clarity now emerging on right of way. Particularly, you have taken, sir, a lot of lead yourself personally. When do we now start seeing a change happening? I know it's a very, very difficult task which we have set up to do on right of way, but are we now going to finally see some traction happening? Are there going to be changes we are foreseeing, and how are you going to involve the states to be a part of this journey? Anjan mentioned about example of the GST council. That day I was talking to Mr. Waghela, who has had the experience of the GST council earlier, and I was telling him that it's important to involve the states. Otherwise, for all the good intent which DOT has, things may not happen the way we want, and it's very important for states to. And so, what are you going to do about that?
Okay, so I will, Rahul, I'll give you a calibrated answer, more frankly on the state's involvement, etc. But on spectrum pricing and delicensing of particular band, you know that I'm not the proper authority to be able to comment on that. There are debates, as you rightly pointed out. There are also demands that there could be a shared kind of an arrangement where everybody has their viewpoint and they can be accommodated. I'm sure DOT and my colleagues in DOT are looking into all those options. As regards bringing states on board, I think now the next step in 5G that we will have to do is to let the states know how telecom rollout is going to benefit them. I think this is one area of communication that we have I think never given our attention to, and we have kind of miserably failed. So where is the question of a state government trying to create roadblocks on telecom infra when that is going to be the only savior for them in case of crisis? So COVID has proved that point, and now perhaps we have in COVID, for all negativity to the humanity, there are some positivities, and this is one of them. That telecom as an infrastructure backbone, it has established itself. This is the time we have a very small window of opportunity for next 6 months. In next 6 months, we have to reach out to everybody who is part of the system and say, okay, you choose. You see, in the National Broadband Mission, as you know, we are now likely to issue the Broadband Readiness Index, and states are going to be ranked. Believe me, when that ranking will come out, and it's going to come out shortly, when the ranking comes out, immediately there will be a fighting among states to know why our ranks have gone down. The chief minister will not let their IT secretaries and chief secretaries sit idle and say why our ranking has gone down, and then let that issue be then placed at their level. Okay, sir, our ranking has gone down because our own municipalities were creating roadblocks. So I'm just giving you a couple of examples. So next 6 months to 1 year are crucial for us. If we are able to lay out very clearly the advantages of having a robust telecom network in our city or in our state, I think half of our problems are solved, because it is ball has to be put in their court. They have to own it. And this ownership has already begun. I was telling you just now in the State Broadband Committee meetings. But we, in the National Fiber Authority concept that we are developing, and very shortly, hopefully, we'll be able to come to you with some kind of a template which we have worked upon, where you can also give very usable inputs. We want that states, districts, everybody has to have a role. Everybody has to have a role, and legal role. Why not? I mean, I can't keep pushing everything from Government of India in Sanchar Bhavan and expecting every municipality to listen to me. That's not the way democratic system will work. But the moment you create an interest, I have a feeling that it will kick off. Because then people will call you and say कि हमारे यहाँ क्यों नहीं बिछा रहे हैं, हमारा शहर फाइबर में पीछे क्यों हो रहा है? You see, long back, 20 years back, I was traveling to US, and in a transshipment in Chicago airport, I found very curious standees in the entire airport. And they were basically large, colorful books. They were placed there by the mayor of Chicago. And any air traveler who was doing a transit in Chicago had an ample time to read those books. And the entire book was actually inviting the world's investors to come and invest in Chicago. And in that book, in colorful manner with graphs and data, he was trying to explain that what all Chicago has to offer. And that included power, road, telecom in those days, 20 years back I'm talking about. So now if the mayor of the city or the municipal commissioner can be explained that, boss, you can actually market your city by saying that my city is the most fiberized city as far as telecom connectivity goes. Let them do that. We haven't sold this idea to them so far. This is what I'm saying. We have something to offer, and let's do it in the next 6 months to 1 year. I hope to see the changes happening, not for every state necessarily on day one, but gradually it will come.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Rao, you have reiterated what I always believed. Whether it's a media company, a manufacturer, a service provider, you have to ask the question to your customer, what can I do for you? And then success, money, everything follows. If I just ask this basic question, listen, what can I do for you? So this is exactly, I think on that note, we can end this seminar. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rao. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay, Anjan, Rahul. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful having you all on board. Thank you.
Thank you. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure
Thank you very
talking to
much.
you all. And